Hi friends, welcome to WafaStudies YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we can get started with lakehouses in Microsoft Fabric. So I would request to watch my previous video, which is introduction to end-to-end analytics using the Microsoft Fabric, and this video will focuses more on the lakehouses in the Microsoft Fabric. So firstly, what is lakehouse mean? From our previous video, we know that the entire Microsoft Fabric actually sits on top of the one lake storage. It's like a single storage on top of which it will completely sit. So lakehouse is also like a storage actually, okay, but it will sit on top of this one lake. It has both the capabilities. It has a storage layer as well from the ADLS Gen 2. That means how much ever the data I can keep, it will grow. It's not like a relational database. At the same times, it has the compute capabilities of SQL and Apache Spark 2 for analyzing the data and exploring the data. So imagine this way. So you have a SQL kind of a capabilities on top of the data lake storage Gen 2 where you store the data in files format, right? So both are combined together is called lakehouse. Okay. So lakehouse is nothing but like a combination of a scalable storage of the data lake. Scalable storage. The word scalable storage means a storage account which can grow automatically when the data comes. Okay. Which happens in the data lake storage Gen 2 where you keep the raw data in files format. Also, it has the ability to query the data like how you query in the data warehouses using a SQL. Even you can use the Apache Spark also to query the data. So both the combinations put together is called lakehouse. So that lakehouse is one of the workload item which is called data engineering workload item we can create in the fabric. Okay. So let's assume this scenario. So let's assume you have a company where they use the data warehouse means like a SQL tables to store the structured data such as maybe like a order history, inventory and customer information blah blah. And also the same company collects lot of unstructured data, that means data in files format from social media, websites and third party services. Now company has decided to combine these data together and then try to analyze the data and generate some kind of insights for the better decision making so that the business can grow, because to grow the business you have to take the combined decisions, right? So you have to take this relational data, also the data coming from social media and all, put together. You have to analyze and see what business decisions we can take to grow your business, right? So data warehouse is a tables, right? Now the structured data is a files format. So you have a tables and you have the files, right? So how we have to combine these two, right? So you use lot of products for it. So you will take maybe data factory and load all the files into some ADLS Gen 2 storage account. Then on top of that, you maybe use the Spark to transform the data, right? And then finally, the Spark transformed data you may put in a SQL table, and after that you will do the analysis using the SQL queries, right? So all these things will happen. But with the lake houses, you no need to do all of this. So it is directly available at a single place for you. Okay. So in that cases, we can use a Microsoft Fabric as a best option to address such scenarios. So if you see here, right, this diagram, so these diagrams give the clear visual representation of the lakehouse. So lakehouse has the data lake as well. That means a storage where you can put the raw data in files format. Okay, and it has the data warehousing capabilities as well. That means like how you query the data in relational databases, the same way you query even in the lake houses as well. So even that is possible. So both combined put together is called the lake house. So how, so when the data is in files format, how can that table kind of in nature is coming? That is due to the delta tables or a delta format tables. Okay, so the tables delta format is nothing but like a Parquet format files in the behind the scenes. With the delta format tables, the advantages is you can update the rows, you can delete the rows, you can insert the new rows. All that acid operations are possible. Okay, so lakehouse is think like a nothing but like a database sitting on top of the data lake. So imagine that way. Why I'm saying database? Because I have a ability to query the data now directly, and it is actually sitting on the data lake storage. It is not like a separate database. So that is the reason lakehouse is think like a database sitting on top of the data lake storage, where the storage layer can scale depending upon the size of the data. So the advantages of this lakehouses is mainly you will get that processing engines also for you, the SQL or Apache Spark. You can use and transform the data. That means maybe query the data and take the subset of the data and all, right? And since it stores the data in a delta table format, so since it's a delta table, so you can use the acid transformations. That means you can update the rows, delete the rows, insert the new rows. All that is possible. And also now it is a single location, right? Your big data is also same place, and even your transactional layer or even your analysis layer, which is the tables and all, also are the same place. So data engineers and data analysts both can come at a same place and work together collaboratively in the lakehouse. So generally what will happen in real time, right? So what data engineers will do, they basically try to load the data into the ADLS Gen 2 storages. Okay, so that's where they work. Now data analyst, what they do, so generally they go to the data warehouse and they start querying the data there. Okay, so if you see, even this data warehouse capability, even this Gen 2 capability or the storage layer capability, both is available in the lake house. So data engineers and data analyst both can come at the same place and work together. Okay, so that is the advantage. And one more thing is, uh, in lake houses, right, you can create something called shortcuts. So why, what is the shortcut meaning is, let's assume you don't have a data on the OneDrive, or sorry, that lake house directly. Let's assume you don't have the data there. Okay, now you want to take the data from the external sources into the fabric in the lakehouse. Then you can create something called a shortcut. Shortcut is like a pointer to some external data. Maybe you have a data in the Azure storage account. So you can point using the shortcuts from the lakehouse to that external file, and you can use that file. Okay, so I will be going through this all theory for starting few minutes, then we will practically implement also all these things now in this video. Okay, so how we can ingest the data into the lake house? The ingestion will happen either using a data factory pipelines, or you can use the data flows. So you can use either data factory pipelines, which is available inside the fabric, or you can use the data flows which is available inside the fabric to ingest the data into the lakehouse. You can also upload the data directly too. So even that is possible. Okay, so after data is ingested into the lakehouse, you can transform the data. That means maybe you can query that data and maybe take the meaningful data out of it. All the things you can do it using either notebooks or data flows. Okay, so you can do all the transformation using that. So once you transform the data and put it in some tables, right, you can use the SQL capabilities there to query the data as well. So all that is possible in the Microsoft Fabric lakehouses. Okay, and when you create the lakehouse, right, what will happen inside the workspace, inside the fabric suite, it will basically create three things, three items. It will create lakehouse, it will create something called semantic model, it will create something called SQL analytics endpoint. So it will create all these three items there when you create the lakehouse in the fabric workspace. So if you can see this diagram here, so this diagram clearly shows that, so we have a lakehouse created here, we have the semantic model created here, we have the SQL endpoint created here. So what is this meaning? So what is lakehouse, semantic model, and the SQL endpoint? So lakehouse is nothing but like a storage layer, right? Where you have all your data, files, and everything. Okay. And semantic model is nothing but like a generally, right? When you work on the Power BI, right? So what will happen? You create something called models. So from the models, model is nothing but like a representation of your data, your tables. So maybe you have a employee table, department table, relationships will be there between the tables. So all that relationships will be established and kept as a model. So that model Power BI consumes to generate the reports. The same way here, the semantic model is the source for the Power BI reports actually. Okay, so when you create a lakehouse, all the lakehouse tables will be automatically comes into the semantic model, and on top of this semantic model you can create the Power BI reports. And there is a SQL endpoint too to query the data in the lakehouse. Let's assume you have a delta format tables in the lakehouse, you can directly write the SQL queries on top of it to query that information. So all these three items will come together when you create a lakehouse in the fabric. Okay. So then when you work with the data in the lakehouse, you can basically work in a two modes. Okay. So one is lakehouse mode. You see this drop down will be there. I will practically show you that also in just a minute. So in the lakehouse mode, when you are working that, then you can see the tables there, you can see the files and folders and everything there. You can navigate them, you can preview them, all that things. But when you switch this mode into the SQL mode, right, SQL endpoint mode, then it will gives you the capability to query the same data using a SQL queries. So you can work in the lakehouse in two modes, either in a lakehouse mode or in a SQL endpoint mode. So when you want to see all the files and everything, like how you see in the data lake storage gen 2, work on the lakehouse mode. When you want to query the information, then that too especially using the SQL, then switch to SQL endpoint mode and work there, write the SQL queries there. And this is, as I said, right, to ingest the data into the lake house, you can either upload, you can either use the gen 2, that means data flows gen 2, and the data factory pipelines. These are the capabilities you can use to ingest the data. In this video we will explore this upload option. I will show in the exercise in couple of minutes. Okay, so finally, to explore and transform the data, also as I said, right, you have a Apache Spark there, you have a SQL endpoint there. Also, even data flows will help you to transform the data, right? If you know the data flows from the data factory, you can apply select transformation, join transformation, and write the queries on top of it like that, right? So you can do all of that. Okay, and then you can use the data pipelines also. Let's say you have created five notebooks, and then you can use that all the pipelines, all the notebooks as activities in the pipeline, and you can run them as a pipeline as well for the transformation part. So to analyze and visualize the data. So when it comes to the analysis part, let's assume you have created a lake house and then you have created a tables there. Now you created a semantic model there, right? So now you want to visualize it as a Power BI. Then what you have to do, you have to go to the semantic model there first, and then from there you have to start creating a report. So I will explain all this now in a practical way. Maybe theory may not make much sense right now. So let's try to do that, a practical exercise to do all these activities in the Microsoft Fabric website. So let's go to the browser here. So this is the Mahir workspace. It's a empty workspace. There is nothing right now. Now in this workspace, let's try to create a new item, and that item is lakehouse. So let me search for lakehouse here. So I'm hitting this lakehouse icon. So I'm naming this lakehouse maybe Mahir Lakehouse. Okay. So that's the name of the lakehouse I am giving it, and hit the create button to create the lakehouse. And as I said, when you create the lakehouse, it actually creates the three items there. Okay. So to show the three items, let me go to the workspace here. See, this is the workspace, and here we have the three items, right? This is a SQL endpoint, this is a semantic model, this is a lakehouse. So all these three type of items it will create. So SQL endpoint, which helps to write the SQL queries, semantic model, which will act as a source for Power BI reporting, and the lakehouse itself, where we can see the tables and files and everything. So let me close this lakehouse here, which it opened already. Let me go to the workspace once again. See here workspace, and let me click this lakehouse, Mahir Lakehouse. Now you can see, now I am in lakehouse. You see there is something called tables. You see there is something called files. Right now there are no tables available, and right now there are no files available. Okay, so what we can do it is, I have one file. I will provide this URL of the file in the video description. Open this file and save it in your local. So let me open this file by clicking that. It's a CSV file, some sales information. So once you open that file, right click and select save as, and try to save that into your system. So I have already saved it as a sales.csv file. So I am not saving right now. So if I go to downloads, I have that sales.csv file there. So when I go to the downloads, I have sales.csv file here. So let's try to upload that, right? To ingest the data into Lakehouse, I can either use the direct upload, or I can create a data, this Gen 2 data flow, or I can use a pipeline, blah, blah, right? Even I can create a shortcut to refer to the external file, right? But I will go this upload option for now. So hit this upload files and browse for my sales.csv file here. So let me navigate to downloads, sales.csv file, and let me upload that. So once I upload this file will come under the lakehouse. So let me close this here, and if I refresh, it should have been landed here. So let me refresh this and let me select the files. See, under files I have the sales.csv file now. So when I click that file, I can actually preview the data as well, like what data we have in that file. I can actually see that information. See, I am able to preview the information of my CSV file. So this is one thing. So let's assume you have the file in some external storage and you want to refer it as a file inside this lakehouse. Then you have to create a shortcut. So for that, right click these three dots here. You see that new shortcut. When you click that new shortcut, it will ask you what is the external source where you have that file. So choose that connector and then select the file. That will automatically points to that external file. It will not copy the external file here, but it will point to into the lakehouse and you can use in the lakehouse. Okay. Now, so I have this file. So ideal case is generally when you have a data, you will create a table on top of it using maybe you will query this information using a Spark, and then you will at the end of the day you will create one table out of it with some meaningful data. So here I will straight away create the table without any much transformation. So I will select these three dots, load to tables, new table. So when I do that, right, so I can give a name to the table and it's a CSV file. So separator is comma, hit that load button. So this will actually create one delta table for me. So all the file data will represent as a table now. So a table will come under the table folder. Great. You can see the table came, and when I click the table, it will start previewing the table as well. Great. We can see all our data got previewed. We have sales order number, sales order line number, order date, customer name, email address, item, quantity, unit price, tax amount, all that information we have it, right? So now I have the table. So, but how to query this? I said in the lake house, you can use the SQL endpoint to query using a SQL as well, right? So, is that possible to query this table using a SQL? Then answer is yes. To query that, right? Switch this lakehouse mode into the SQL endpoint mode. So, at the top right corner, right? I'm switching the mode to the SQL endpoint mode. So, it will take a minute to load that. And once it loads it, right? I can start writing my SQL queries as well. So, let me select this here. Now that we are in the SQL mode, so that is the reason you can see that a different kind of a view. Now there is something called queries, there is something called model. This is a semantic model basically. There is something called lakehouse name with schemas and security folder, right? So this is a different kind of a view, and you can see that new query option there, right? So it's a SQL endpoint view basically, and you can make sure that same thing from here as well, right? So if you want to switch back to the lakehouse mode, you have to again switch back to the lakehouse. So I am interested to work on the SQL Analytics endpoint mode. So let me go to the schemas. You see under DBO, there is a sales table is already available. So now I can query this table. So I can take some new query here and I can write a SQL query there. So I have one query already written for this. Let me copy that query that will perform group by items. Okay, see what I'm doing it, I'm performing a group by item and I'm calculating revenue by multiplying quantity and the unit price. So let me run this query now. You can see the results. It will actually hit that sales table which I created via CSV file, and it will use this SQL capability of querying that information, and it will display the data also to me. You see that I am getting an item and revenue details, right? So how this is happened because of that capability of the lake house, which where it has a data lake storage plus data warehousing, both combined capability, right? So I can use the SQL here to query the information very easily. Not only a regular SQL where you write a SQL query, you can use a visual SQL as well, or visual query as well. So visual query is nothing but like a it's like a basically Power Query. So if you are a Power BI engineer, you may be mostly familiar with using a Power Query, a visually transforming the data and all, right? So even that is possible. So you need to use this visual query and maybe take this table, sales table, and drag and drop to there. So you let me select this table here and drag onto the visual query. So when you drag and drop the visual query, it will load the table here. You see visually it gave the table to you. So I have so many rows. Now maybe I want to take only two rows and then perform some kind of a group by. So I want to take maybe sales order and sales order line number. So what I can do under manage columns, choose columns. So I don't want all the columns. I want to take only two columns first. So this is the step one which I want to do. So click OK. So see, now the output changed. It's like a Power Query, how you do the transformation in the Power BI. So now once you have this in Power BI desktop, you generally data analyst is familiar with this kind of a transformation. So now once you have, maybe I want to perform the group by. So what I can do, I can go to the transform group by. I want to group by sales order number and I want to calculate the count there. So finally hit OK. So this will group by my sales order. See, and it gives me the count back, right? So this is how you will do that. So you using Visual SQL as well or using Visual Query as well, you can basically transform your data. So it is very clear that with these two steps of SQL query and Visual Query, we can basically work with our data, we can analyze the data, we can query the data using a SQL capabilities very easily. Now how to create a reports out of it? So in this case my lakehouse has only one table. In reality you may have a tens of 20 or hundreds of the tables. So maybe you have all the data in the tables as a, imagine like that tables are like a data warehouse tables, the end tables. Now on top of the tables you want to create a report. So how to do that via lakehouse? That is also possible here itself. So firstly you have to go to the model layout. This is a semantic model. It will show you all your tables of lakehouse and you can establish the relationships between them. So these tables, execute request history, execute session history, these tables are system tables, so ignore that, but this table is our table. So right now in our lakehouse we have only one table, so we are not doing any relationship establishment. But let's assume you have an employee table and you have a department table. Then you can add the foreign key, primary key, and you can create the one to many, many to one relationship, and finally have your model ready and use that model in the reporting to create the Power BI report. So in this case, I have only one table. I no need to create any model. So assume that my model is already ready. So now I want to create a report out of it, right? So go to the reporting tab at the top and then hit this new report. So this will open the a new view where I can basically, so you need to hit this continue button as well. A new view, it will look like a Power BI desktop exactly, and you can start creating your report there. So let's wait for the report view to load here, and let's try to develop that report now, a simple report. You can see that semantic model is successfully updated, a report view is came. Now you see that our sales table also appeared here. I can use this sales table and try to visualize my data in the reports. So what I can do from the sales table, maybe I want to take the item and quantity. So item wise quantity I want to take and represent the data in the Power BI report. Okay. So this is my data. Maybe what I want to do, I want to use this clustered bar chart. Okay. So now I have every item, how much quantity we sold already. Okay. Because it is a sales data. So for example, this road tire tube, we sold these many, right? When I hover 1212, that is a quantity we sold. So items sold information we are visualizing in a better way using a cluster broad chart, and we created a report now. So once we have the report, I can go to this file menu. I can hit this save button to save the report. It will ask me to save where. So I want to save in the same workspace. So I want to give a name for my report. So I will give like maybe items sale report. Okay. So let me hit save. So once I save this, my entire report will get saved into my workspace, which is Mahir workspace. So now let me close this lakehouse here. See, I'm closing these all these tabs. So let me close this lakehouse and let me close this report also here, and let me go to the workspace alone. So right now I'm in workspace. You can see that my report came here as well. So I initially created a lakehouse which came along with a lakehouse for the files and tables, semantic model which acts as a source for the report, SQL endpoint which help you to query the data using the SQL. Now I, at the end of the demo, I created a report as well. So whenever I open this report, that report will come for me for with all the visualization, right? So I hope you got a fair idea about lakehouse. To conclude this, so lakehouse is think like a combination of storage layer from the data lake plus SQL capabilities for querying, or that means data warehouse capabilities put together called a lakehouse. In lakehouse you can keep the data in files as well. So we have uploaded a file there, and you can keep the data in the tables as well. So we created a delta format table there, and then that tables we can query using the SQL endpoint by turning the mode of the lakehouse, and we have opened the model, and from there we created a report as well on top of that delta format tables which are available in lakehouse. So we did end to end everything, right? We ingested the data into the lakehouse, we transformed the data and created a table there, and that table we are using is like a data warehouse table for our reporting. We created a model and we created a report. Everything we did put together in the lakehouse, right? So it is a very key concept or very important item to understand in the fabric world. So I hope you got a fair idea about the lakehouses. Stay tuned for the more conceptual videos in the Microsoft Fabric. Have a nice day. Thank you.